Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
All right, episode 70, season 3 tonight. Matt, we have Lexi Matheney on. Hi, Lexi.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you on too. We're gonna do like there's we started doing it again. We talked for about 5-10 minutes and started having great conversation. And Matt and I always say we should just hit record when you come on the air. But so we got to kind of start over. We are Matt comes in blind to this like always. I've known Lexi for quite a few years now. But Lexi, let's just start. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, where you went to college, what you're doing now. Then we'll go from there. You got a great story so far, and you got so much more in life to accomplish.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess I'll just start from the beginning. So, I'm from a small town, Lancaster, Ohio, which is 30 minutes south of Columbus, if you are familiar with that area. I am the youngest of four. So, I have an older brother who's 13 years older and two sisters who are twins, and they're 3 years older than me. Um, And I guess my whole family has just been involved in sports. So my dad played baseball, basketball, and ran cross country. He was a college basketball coach for 20 years at OUL, which is a branch off of Ohio University. And then my brother played football, basketball, baseball, and he ended up playing Division 1 at Holy Cross in Boston. And then he transferred to Ohio State to play football. And same with my sisters, they played multiple sports. So growing up, I was just surrounded by it. And from an early age, probably about 4 or 5, my sisters started playing t-ball, and I just watched them and learned from them. And I wanted to do exactly what they were doing. So I kind of got into softball super young, and then going to my dad's basketball games, I started that. And then I added volleyball into that as well. So I played 3 sports in high school, all 4 years. I played basketball, volleyball, and softball. Um, and along with sports, my sisters, when they started school, I kind of watched them, and I wanted to be in school and wanted to learn from them. So I just started really young, and I started school early, and I ended up throughout high school. I was always a younger person in the grade, but I think that's helped me a lot. Just watching my sisters and everything growing up. And then I committed to University at Buffalo. I picked softball to play. And I went to UB, like Paul said, for 4 years, played softball, and now I'm graduating next month with my master's in occupational therapy. So I'm super excited to start a new journey in my life.
So you're a retired student athlete about to face the real world, right?
Yes, and it's a little scary, but and I also was just thinking about this. I played softball since I was 4 years old, and I haven't been without softball or sports in my life until this year, until this past May, I guess. So it's definitely been a transition. Not playing sports. I still watch them, and my dad and I still go to the Bengals games. That's our new thing. He got season tickets this past year. Um, and obviously they've been doing really well. I'm sorry if you're a Bills fan, or I guess you're a
It's
Steelers
worse.
fan.
We're both Steelers
Both
fans, so
Steelers fans.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Although I admit I'm a big Joe Burrow fan, so my
yes.
daughter was at LSU for a bit, and so in any case, well, Lexi, tell us a little bit about the transition. I mean, obviously, sports has been a huge part of your life, probably even before you were born. It was going to happen with based on the family dynamic you're talking about. You spent a tremendous amount of time, I would imagine, in sports, not just playing, but practicing and preparing to accomplish some of the things it sounds like you've accomplished. Now that it's over in the sense of that type of commitment. I mean, I'm sure you can play softball, beer leagues and some of
Yeah.
those kinds of things, but it's probably not the same, I would imagine, than what were you used to. What kind of transitions that look like? Is there a gap there? How are you filling it? What's but both time wise and just emotionally and how you identify yourself.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So towards the end of last year, I knew softball was coming to an end, and I had already faced the fact of ending my volleyball and basketball career because that was a big part of my life as well. But for softball, it was like that was my whole identity. I was known, everybody who knew me and knew I loved softball. That was what I did every summer. I played travel ball. I went to lessons. I taught at camps for like high schoolers. I was just around it my whole life. So people hear my name that they always thought of me as a softball player. And that's how I thought of myself. And it took me a little bit my senior year to just realize, I had always wanted to move on and I had goals in my life to be, an occupational therapist. I wanted to end up maybe going to coaching, but the player and the competitive side of me was having a hard time just trying to transition. And, I think a lot of that for me, it was just within myself. And, in college, softball is completely different than high school and travel ball. And everybody's going to tell you that. So I think I kind of was learning it through college. Like my performance on the field wasn't who I was. Yes, I was a softball player, but I also was going to be an occupational therapist. I was a student. I was a friend, and those were the important things to me, just who I was as a person.
Was that hard to do from someone who identified as an athlete, as a softball player? Because I think you're and it's very common, you're in this strange mode of recognizing that this is how everyone views me. And I don't care if we're talking about softball or talking about, being a teacher or a business person or whatever. And I'm asking this from someone who Paul, before we started recording, I think, Paul, you'd said I'd reinvented myself. Well, I've probably reinvented myself, Lexi, a handful of times over the years. It hasn't just been once. And there's been a number of reasons for that. But one of the things that I believe in is that trying to remove an identity for myself is very important because it's going to happen throughout life, and being young and going through that and being successful. How'd you do that? And was it painful?
I guess I'm still kind of going through it. So it's still the transition. I wouldn't say it's very easy on me. I go back and I watch the college games and I miss it. I'm not going to lie. Like it's hard for me to watch it, but I do know like that was a great time in my life and it gave me so many opportunities. I got to go to college and meet all the people that I did through softball, just not only at college, but through high school and growing up. So I think it's definitely still something I'm learning to do. Everybody, I feel like when they ask me like how, the first thing that they bring up is softball, which is great. I love being known for softball, but I'm still trying to work through that. And if you have any tips, I would love to hear them.
So I played college golf 100 years ago. Graduated in '94. I was redshirted before I transferred, so I actually had another year. And when it was time to graduate, I was ready to move on. And it was super tough because that's all I wanted to play my whole life. And now you're working, and I can't go play golf at 8 in the morning and 5. But what I found got easier. To me, the hardest part, like you still have people on the team, right?
Mhm.
And you've been to battle with them, quotes, and you have so many memories with them. You have people that have left before you too, of course. I think it gets a lot easier when you don't know anybody that's left on the team.
That's true.
Just that's what happened to me. I'm not saying it'll happen to you. So that old adage, time does heal that, and you're off and about, and you go have reunions with friends from the team or the relationships you built, or maybe you have opportunities in business world or the health industry because of people you met through the sport. So you start cashing in on those relationships more once everybody leaves. That's my tip. If it's useful or not,
Yeah.
I don't know. But
No, that helps. Jen and I always talk about that. We are like, yes, we miss softball, but the biggest thing is the people that we met. And, you were surrounded with them, whether you liked it or not. Most times you liked it, but for practices and games, we were just around each other all the time. So we create those memories and those friendships. And, you know, it does hurt, not being around those girls all the time, because you're still able to talk to them, but it's just different. It's not the same. You're not seeing them, 5 hours a day or on the long bus trips. So it's definitely
Let's face
transition.
it, teams are the greatest thing, whether it's a team for a project at work or a team at school or a team in college, because you go through adversity together. You
Mhm.
learn together, and it's okay to butt heads together and figure out how to heal afterwards. And you don't
Mhm.
get to do that with those people anymore. So you're talking to them in a whole different manner, right?
Exactly. Yep.
That's probably what you miss, I'm guessing, some of that too.
Yeah, it's for sure the friendships. Jenna and I are always going to be close, and we're lifelong friends ever since we met 4 years ago. But our relationship has changed over the last couple of years, with her being in Virginia and me going back between New York and Ohio.
She doesn't bother you
Lexi,
as much anymore, right?
No, no, we still talk.
Good.
what was, I'm always curious, talking to student athletes or former student athletes, what was the most difficult part of it for you? And following that up, would you do it again?
Okay. So, first question, what was the most difficult part for me? I would say, as I got further into my major, I made a commitment to be a part of this team and, put all my time and effort into softball and practice. But I also made a commitment into this 5-year program of occupational therapy that was a rigorous program and needed my time and attention and all my effort. And so for me, especially in my junior and senior year, it was hard for me to be able to go to practice and the games. So I don't know if you actually know this, Paul, but my senior year, I couldn't go to practice that much. My classes, they're like, you need to be there or you can't really continue this program. And so we have games on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and normally we fly out on Thursdays. So the coaches worked with me really well, and the program worked with me as much as they could, and I had to fly out separately for two of the tournaments, actually, so I could go to class on that Thursday, and even one of them was over Zoom, and I had to be on Zoom in the airport. So I think for me, was trying I was very good at managing my time, but there was almost always conflicts, practice at the same time with my classes. And you would like to say that they can accommodate, but some things that they couldn't for me. And my coaches worked really well with me and helped me a lot my junior and senior year, so I could still play softball and continue my education. So, and then,
Is
and
it
if I would do it again,
Yeah.
100%, I like softball, play softball, go through OT. My dad and I actually talked about this the other day. Going into my major, I had no idea that my schedule was going to be the way it was. And would I have continued with my major? I wasn't in my freshman year. I wasn't fully in love with OT yet. I wasn't too sure what it was. I didn't know if I was gonna like it. So I don't know if I would have chosen the major that I did, knowing what I do now. But I'm glad it happened the way it happened. Everything happens for a reason.
that's a great point because I know I know both my daughters know. Jenna, for the listeners that she's talking about, is my older daughter. I have a younger daughter, Allie, that plays too. But we all know people that put the sport over the major. And then after they're done playing the sport, they have to go back to school for another major or other classes. So
Exactly.
it's interesting. If you were a freshman and knew all that, who knows if you would have done the same thing? Because it's very tempting, even though you know it's
Yeah,
not the right choice.
exactly. And
So,
knowing what I
well,
know about OT now is completely different. So
you picked the right major. You can tell you love it.
I do. Yeah. You always hear, freshman year, I heard about specific majors. They give you specific majors that you can't play softball with. So for us, it was
Well,
nursing. Yeah. So that was the only major that they had told me that you couldn't play softball with, and I wasn't interested in nursing. So that was no problem. And I guess I really did not take into account coming into college that there would be that many conflicts, I guess, and that it would be that difficult for me to manage, just being able to go to practice. But our practices were in the middle of the day and they were 3 hours long. So I guess it makes sense that they were going to have some conflicting times with it.
Lexi, one question I have for you, and I think it's very relevant for athletes and those athletes who've competed at a high level for a long time, which I would put you in that category based on what I know. You know, I don't want to put you in a box here, but in a lot of ways, your whole life you've been spent in a zero-sum game, right? You either win or you lose, right? You either won the game or you lost the game, or even more personally, you either succeeded with getting a hit or striking someone out or making the basket or whatever it might be.
Or play or don't play. I mean, all that. Yeah.
Sure, Paul. That good, right? Play or don't play. All these things are so obvious whether you succeeded or not, at least to some degree, right? But now you transition out into the world of occupational therapy, and you're dealing with something that's not zero sum. You're not. Maybe you think of it differently, but you're not competing against the other OTs or competing against a physical therapist or whatever it might be. How do you, is that something you're concerned about? Is your mindset such that I'm a winner, I got to win, I got to get the hit, I got to be a starter, whatever those things might be. And now you go into a different world where those aren't the same terms. Those aren't the same way you look at success and failure, because you're going to have both. Does that ever cross your mind, or what do you think about that question?
I guess I haven't really thought about it like that. I would say I am super competitive, and you're taught at a young age as an athlete that you want to be the best, and that if you're not working hard, somebody's outworking you at that time. So if you're not doing something with your sport or doing something to be an athlete, increase your strength or lifting or running or endurance. So I think that's always on my mind, but I wouldn't necessarily say like, I'm going to be upset if I don't have those things where I'm not winning, because they were a part of my life for so long. And I think it's more enjoyable for me if I don't think about it that way. I could be different. Through softball, it had always been fun for me, and basketball and volleyball were super fun growing up. But I ended up taking softball super serious, and I got down on myself if I wasn't playing the way that I wanted to play. And I think at this point in my life, it's a good thing for me to move on from that. Not being so hard on yourself, and because softball, I mean, 1 for 3 is great. And
right.
that was hard for me to learn in college, and when I was probably in like 7th or 8th grade, how softball gets super serious and you start trying to get recruited. I think that's when I lost some of the love of the game for softball. And I took a break from softball at 8th grade, and I ran track instead. So yeah, I ran track my 8th grade year. I told my parents I didn't want to play softball. It was getting serious. I had to talk to college coaches. Everything was based on my performance, and I couldn't handle that at that time. So I took the year off, and I think it made me stronger with softball and coming back into it. And I played my freshman year of high school, and everything was great. I played in the summer. So I guess my point is, I think having this break right now is great for me, because it's not about exactly winning or losing or, going 3 for 3. And I'm sure I'm going to find something later on that I will get back into the, competitive side of me.
So you basically answered my next question. I was going to ask what you plan on doing to compete, because if you're a competitor, you're always going to be a competitor. But I got to go back to the not playing in 8th grade, you said it was?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talk about perspective all the time, and kudos to your parents. I don't know how happy they were at the time, but because like we used to ask our daughters, do you still want to play next year? Do you still want to play next year? And they always said yes, but I don't know what I really would have done if they said no.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
so give them credit, and you came back to the game, and it provided a much needed perspective at that time. And like you said, you're kind of doing the same thing now. So
yeah.
was that easy when you said you weren't going to play?
So with all three of my sports, I think I always saw basketball and volleyball as something fun. It was stress free. I was playing it just like I loved playing it and I was very competitive in those sports, but it wasn't serious. So, like I said, in seventh and eighth grade, you start super young thinking about colleges and what travel team you're going to and what showcases that your college coaches will be at. And I think that really, looking back, now I think that's what was getting in my head, but at the time I was just I hated softball. I told my parents, I was like, I don't want to play the sport. And I think that was really hard on them because they knew I mean, I guess how successful I had been in that sport, and I think they saw a future for me even when I didn't see it. So they were great during that time. They're like, okay, we'll take the school season off. Yeah, my parents, I know you don't know this, Matt, but my parents live, breathe softball. They love watching me play.
Okay.
And I know it must have been really hard on them, but I was just very adamant. If I wasn't taking the season off, I couldn't continue. And I think a lot of it had to do with my relationships in high school as well. So I don't know. I think I just was nervous about, transitioning into high school. And I ran track and I loved track and I loved the people I ran track with. And, I did high jump. I did like the 100-meter, 200-meter, and it was great. So, and I think I ended up playing in the summer. So it all
Th-
worked
th-
out.
This is the greatest lesson. I think more parents need to hear that, because you've gotta respect that, because there's all-star games and all-American status for middle school kids and
Mhm.
trophies, and you got to know where you're going to school. And you paused, and they respected that no matter how hard it was. And look, at the rest is history. You had a fantastic career, and I witnessed dozens of games. So I just,
Thank
that
you.
perspective provided that year probably shaped you and helped you in more ways than you can even imagine.
Exactly. And, I also, yes, I was looking for colleges at that point, but I didn't commit to UB till my senior year of high school. So it was a huge decision that I didn't take lightly, just picking a school based on the softball. But, I really just spent those 4 years trying to figure out what I wanted and if I wanted to play softball and continue. And I think that break really helped me.
Well, that's good for you, because it almost should be illegal before your senior year. Because how do you even know
Yeah,
what
I
you want to
know.
do as a person? You know?
Yeah.
And I know it works out for thousands and thousands of people, no matter what year they commit, but good for you. Matt, I know you got something in between your ears right now.
Of course I do, but that's like you said, that's great perspective, and like Paul said, I think kudos to your parents for giving you that opportunity to have that year to yourself and live with live with whatever decision you were going to make. It couldn't have been easy. As a parent myself, it could not have been easy.
I have to interrupt quick, and they are the greatest parents. They're softball fans, right? They're the greatest
Yes.
softball fans. The cowbell, the sayings, everything's incredible. High
My
energy.
yeah, my
So
parents didn't miss a game my senior year and they traveled everywhere.
that's great. That's great. I'm sure that was those are memories you'll all have. That you'll never forget. So why OT? Why'd you choose that path?
Well,
First of all, Lexi, explain it, because most people don't even know what the heck it is. They only know what a physical therapist is. You mentioned occupational therapist, and as I was saying before we started recording, my wife is an OT. She doesn't practice right now, but so I'm much more knowledgeable than the average person. But it makes me laugh every time she would bring up she's an occupational therapist, how few people actually know what that is. And admittedly, I didn't when I met her. So
exactly. So when I came into UB, I I didn't know what OT was. I'm going to be honest. I had no idea what occupational therapy was. I knew what physical therapy was, but reading into UB and their majors, it sounded like something that I was super interested in. You know, I did my research on it and I never changed my major. I fell in love with it. Occupational therapy changes, the definition kind of changes depending on what setting you're in.
Mm.
But what's so great about it is that you can work in a hospital, a school, outpatient, inpatient, and you can work with a variety of ages. So from birth to, you know, geriatrics. But what I like to say is what we focus on are the meaningful activities to them and getting them back to what they want to be able to do. So it might look different if they're 5 years old versus they're, you know, 80. So it really just changes if you're in a school, you're working on those activities and those skills to get them to be able to participate in a school setting, in the community with friends. And then at an older age, it could be just things at home, you know, getting around the house, doing what we call activities of daily living. It could be cooking, self-care skills. So we do a lot. There's a range of activities and range of things that we could work on, but that's kind of the gist of it.
And did you always have an inclination to want to help people? Was it anything that happened in your sports career, injury wise, or anything like that, or just something you found interesting?
I really think it was something I found interesting. I do want to end up working with athletes, and it may look different with occupational therapy versus as it would with a physical therapist. But I think that was definitely in my head when I was choosing the major. You know, I always wanted to help others, and I didn't want to, no hate for people that are doing this, but I wasn't the type of person that wanted to sit at a desk a lot of the time. And, you know, I wanted to be up and moving and interacting with others. So I can be an extrovert at times. So I really like talking and hearing other people's stories and helping them get back to being independent and be safe.
So again, I go back to the sports thing and the career thing, and this is a question that I ask because I find so many people find themselves in a position where they attain their dream job, whatever that happens to be. Generally, it's changes as they age and experience things. But someone like yourself, who's I assume is always driven towards the next thing, right? The whether it's personal success, whether it's team success, whether it's a scholarship, there's always something you're driving towards, you know, a better batting average, you know, whatever it is. When you get out in a world like occupational therapists, there's not like, I mean, I guess maybe there'd be a senior occupational therapist or something like that. But how do you take how do you take a lifetime of drive, and then do you think you find yourself in a position where you settle? And I mean that I don't mean that in a negative. Well, I do mean it in a negative way, to be honest with you. I mean it in a way where you're like, okay, am I bored now? And where do I go from here? Maybe, you know, maybe there's, you know, being the administrator within the setting you're at or whatever it might be. Do you ever consider, you know, those kinds of things? And Lexi, I'm not here to toss you softballs. That's happened enough in your life here. I like asking difficult questions of people.
Yeah.
Has that ever been something you consider?
Yeah. So my goal for OT is obviously I don't ever want to settle in my life. I don't really think that's just who I am as a person. My goal is to try to get experience within the pediatric field. So I want to go to the hospital where I can get a lot of experience and knowledge from other occupational therapists who have been there longer. And my dream is, you know, finding something that I really like, whether it could be aquatic therapy or feeding therapy, and, you know, just trying to be the best OT in that. You know, I want to own my own practice someday and be something where people, you know, that is the best feeding therapist or aquatic therapist. You know, like I want to find something that interests me enough that I can, you know, go to conferences and get extra education and eventually be that go-to therapist. And that's my ideal goal, but I first need to find something I'm really, really interested within the field.
That's exactly what type of thing I was wondering about. So that very interesting.
Lexi, we've had several athletes on, and we all know how grueling the Division I lifestyle and schedule can be.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're finishing your OT degree. Uh, is it easier without softball? Is it harder to manage your time because you have more free time? Or tell us about that. What that transition's been like.
Well, I definitely would say it's easier without softball. Even when I was in my clinicals, I had more free time. I was less stressed. You know, I love softball and it's taught me so many skills to be successful in the future and to be the best, go and be a great occupational therapist. But I will say it was a lot harder being a student athlete and a student, in college than where I am now, just a student. And right now, I would say I do better under pressure. And, we only had a small amount of time to get our work done when I was an athlete. And, I was very productive. Now I think I kind of wait to get some tasks done and I have all this free time and I still go to the gym and lift, but I'm like, oh, I have all day. And then, I think that since I don't have those deadlines or that pressure, it kind of takes it off of me a little bit.
No, that's important, and those are the lessons learned when you're in the thick of it. You don't realize what you're doing time wise is so special, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, the years I've known you now, I know you'll find ways to fill that void in time
Thank
and
you.
keep busy and be super productive because that's how you're wired, I believe.
Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that student athletes gain that I think everyone can learn from is that ability to manage their time in a way that you talk to a lot of people and there's just not enough time. I can't do it, and then you discuss with someone like yourself what it took to go to school, play competitively, all the workouts, the training, the practices, the travel, all that goes into it. And you have a little less sympathy for the people who don't have all those things telling you how busy their lifestyle is. That's certainly my perspective. But one of the things I'm curious about is what was one of the best in this process leading up to really, let's say, going to college and making that commitment. What was one of the best decisions you made in that process leading up to it? And what was one of the decisions that you may have made differently? And I'm looking at this from a perspective of maybe someone who has kids who are in a similar situation or might be in a similar situation themselves, like something that you're like, I nailed it there, and another one where you're like, maybe not so much.
Well, I would say definitely the biggest thing that I'm so happy that I made this decision. I was always a homebody, so I loved my family. We were tight knit, and we're still tight knit. But when I made the decision to move 5.5 hours away, that was a big decision. And if you knew me, you would have never thought I would move away from my family. You would have thought I would have stayed in Ohio and stayed close. And making that decision was super hard on me, and super hard on my family. So we went from me living with them and to be 6 hours away. So it took a toll on me, but I definitely don't regret it. I think I learned how to be independent, learned how to do things by myself, and it taught me a lot of skills. And I met amazing people in Buffalo. So I definitely think that was a huge jump for me, and I still can't believe that I made that decision. But I guess something that I would change or maybe I would do differently. I would just say getting so hard on myself. I look back at my career and softball's great and it was a big part of my life, but I took it so seriously that it consumed how I felt around my friends, around my family. And I definitely think softball, at the end of the day, it's a huge part of you, but it's not my whole life. And, you're bigger than just a softball player. And I wasn't going to go play professionally. So I wish I would have just taken the time to enjoy, being around my friends and just enjoying playing the game. I had a passion for softball ever since I was young. And I think at times I lost it because I took it to the heart, when I wasn't successful. But, I found my way, and I had to fight through adversity and, fight through those feelings. And I loved my career. I loved playing softball at UB, and I loved the people that I met there. So I definitely think I got through it, but at times I could have been too hard on myself.
That's some great perspective. Both answers are great, and obviously are going to just make you a better, more successful person. And those were excellent. I think any of us, I don't care whether you're a parent or a student athlete or whatever it might be, I think those answers apply to all of us in some way, shape, and form. Wouldn't you say, Paul?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up with 2 questions. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
I always get the end when I think Matt's run his course, So looking back at your college softball career, what was your favorite moment of playing? And it could be games. It doesn't have to be on the field, but what was your favorite moment? What pops into mind? Most memorable moment about playing? Maybe that's a hard question.
I guess most memorable. I mean, I feel like I can't even pinpoint. I just think it's the bus rides, like the long bus rides that we had with each other. And also, I guess playing at LSU, that was a really cool experience, and getting to play in those facilities. But yeah, I would just say the bus rides, not one specific, but just being around everyone for, 10 to 12 hours. And I feel like that's when we really bonded and got to know each other.
Isn't that amazing? All the swings, all the catches, all the
Oh,
not airs with you, but for some people,
yeah.
all that. It's the relationships at the end of the day. It's the
Mhm.
relationships, and you've been again in situations with people that you can probably trust for the rest of your life, right?
For sure. I met my best friends in college. I'll always say that. Now
That's
they're so far away from me, but it's okay.
yeah, but you guys can change that.
Yeah.
Last question. So if you had to go back and give yourself advice as a early teen about sports, and because I think there's so many athletes that they're brainwashed or trained or told, oh, you're so awesome, you can go play college athletics. What advice would you give them about the process and maybe even getting there?
I guess the advice I would give anyone is that you have to put the work in. So it's not something that's just going to come super easily. Like even the best athletes, they're going to be taking the extra time to, have lessons or just putting that extra work in when nobody's around. So my biggest thing is what I like to say is you don't always have to have the camera on you to be working. So I think a lot of athletes say it's great. Social media is a great platform for people to put out for recruitment, but I also think it's when nobody's looking, when your parents aren't telling you to go hit off the tee or they schedule a lesson. It's what you want to do, and at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you a great player, whether it's softball or basketball or even in your career outside. Nobody's going to continue to tell you when you have a job to get your stuff done, and you have to put that extra work in. Like that is you have to be self-motivating to complete things. So I think that goes with sports, with your work, with anything that you're doing. You're at the end of the day, it's what you want to do.
Oh man, that's good stuff, and it goes fast. It goes fast, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so fast. I still think of myself as a softball player right now. It's weird.
Well, I still think of myself as like 18, so that's okay. Definitely keeps you young. Lexi, thanks for coming on. We're gonna have you on when you own your own practice someday. How's that?
Oh, perfect. That sounds great. Thank you for
Maybe
having
before
me.
that too. Maybe before.
Right before. Thank you
Hey,
guys so much.
we appreciate it. See you, Lexi.
Thank you.
Yeah.